나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교 나무 묘호랭개교. Hello, friends. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. So good to see you again. I hope you're healthy these days and secure. And let's see how far we can get through the Ongi Kuden today. Don't think we'll finish it, but we'll get a good bit of it done. Number 8. Quote, he, the good physician, pounded, sifted, and blended the herbs, and gave them to his children, ordering them to drink the medicine, end quote. You remember in the story of the doctor and the three sons, and his giving them the good medicine, but sometimes people don't know or doubt or even contrive to think that the medicine might actually be poison. For some reason, their father would be poisoning them. It's just a story about how attitudes are different in people or in all of us, depending on different times. And then, so he fakes his own death. He says, I'm leaving and I'll be back. And while two of the sons took the medicine, the one didn't because he was already far gone or whatever in his head. He was in the wrong place and he thought his father was trying to poison them. He wouldn't take the medicine. So in order for his son to take the medicine, the father left and he sent a messenger back to say, your father's died. And the children, the boys were all lamenting. And then suddenly the father appears. I'm not dead, I'm here. And the son that wouldn't take the medicine is so blown away, is so happy his father's here. He says, yeah, I'll take the medicine, and convinces the son to take the medicine. And then all of them are saved, right, from their illness. It's obviously kind of a fable, kind of a story, and an analogy that says that even the best of us, sometimes our mind gets in the way and creates all sorts of false thinking and gets in our way, our very own way of our awakening, our enlightenment, our happiest self, right? So this is a fable from the Lotus Sutra. So this sentence, I guess we're now going to take apart. The Ongi Kuden states, supposedly the notes taken by Nico with 2 Ks, this passage clarifies the 3 truths of emptiness: provisional existence and the middle way, as well as the 3 studies of the precepts, meditation, and wisdom. Sure, let's throw everything that comes in threes into this analogy. Okay. Now, in a way, I guess you could say, on the one hand, there's an obsession with the words here. We've already discussed that. But in another way, if we think of notes that this one of 6 senior monks was taking during Nichiren's lectures to them, it might be dense with a lot of analogies like this, strictly for the purposes of having as many tools in your teaching toolkit to be able to relate the words of the Lotus Sutra to different people. So in that regard, I suppose we can forgive the over-analytical, associative kind of nature of this document. I mean, we have to admit, this document wasn't something really intended for public consumption. This document, well, not this document, but the document, well, perhaps in both cases, the document specifically of the Ongi Kuden, which is being quoted from consistently now, rather than jumping around to other documents like the Wen Chu and so forth. This is note-taking. This is like I'm in my university classroom and I'm listening to a lecture and I'm taking notes. And those notes that we would take as students would be really notes to spark our memory and our associations in order to learn and have as many pathways, mental pathways, word pathways into analogies, examples, styles of understanding, comprehensions that would help us to recall the larger meaning in different ways of a certain teaching. So in that regard, I think perhaps we can forgive the obsessive nature of associations, either with words or numbers. And this happens throughout Buddhism anyway, but it's excessive in this document. And, the document in its nature, as I've said before, looks like it's a monk, a senior monk of the Fuji school, perhaps putting his thoughts in order to be evaluated for a position of maybe taking over another temple. So it's studious, is what I'm saying. It's not unlike a student, right? These supposedly are the words of Nikko Shonin, one of the 6 senior monks. But as it's documented here, this is something that happened long after Nichiren's death and probably Nikko's death as well. So let's go on. It refers to the good medicine that is colorful, fragrant, beautiful, and tasty. He's adding some adjectives there from the story itself, but okay. Pound, here we go, word for word. Pound, quote unquote, indicates the truth of emptiness. Sift indicates the truth of provisional existence. Blend indicates the middle way. Give means to confer, okay. Children are the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra. Yeah, that's the basis of the analogy. Take means to accept and hold. Concerning this, the sutra states, quote, this great good medicine is colorful, fragrant, beautiful, and tasty, altogether perfect, end quote. This is from a different part. This isn't from the story. This is from a different part of the Lotus. Let's see if it says in here. There's my page-turning karma. And, of course, it's just a reference to Taisho number, a certain document that is recorded. Doesn't tell us. Okay, the 2 words, altogether perfect, quote, means that all the countless practices and good deeds, all the paramitas performed by the Buddha, are perfectly contained within the great good medicine of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Yeah, that is the overall meaning of the analogy, is that sometimes we get in our own way of learning the truth, and the truth is the ultimate law of all phenomena in the universe, Myoho Renge Kyo. He's just breaking it down word for word and making other associations, probably as a teaching tool for himself. Colorful and fragrant, quote unquote, etc., means that, quote, of all that has color and fragrance, there is none that is not the middle way, end quote. And again, that's that border, that middle way between samsaric reality and real reality, the nature of all reality, of all phenomena, being Myoho Renge Kyo, the Buddha, the energy, the inflow, right? In flux constantly. Whereas samsara, everything wants to be static, not evolving, just being held, right? Do, 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 do. And indicates the Buddhahood of grasses and trees. Again, same analogy. Thus, there is not a single Dharma that is not perfectly contained within the 5 characters of the Daimoku. For those who take this medicine, it will, quote, quickly remove their suffering and torment, end quote. This being the case, to take the great good medicine of the wonderful Dharma is to remove the sickness and pain of the worldly passions arising from the 3 poisons of greed, anger, and folly, or foolishness. The practitioner of the Lotus Sutra who chants Namu Myoho Renge Kyo does not accept offerings from those who slander the Dharma. This removes the sickness of greed. Though the practitioner of the Lotus Sutra may be reviled and abused, he practices forbearance. This removes the sickness of anger. Interesting. The practitioner knows that he shall attain Buddhahood in accordance with the passage, quote, this person with respect to the Buddha way is assured there can be no doubt, end quote. This subdues the defilement of foolishness. Thus, the great good medicine is the amrita of, or amrita, I've heard it spelled, of Buddhahood for the final Dharma age. Now, Nichiren and his followers, who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, are the original possessors of the great good medicine. So that's our status, right? So it's interesting. He's taken the story and tilted it a little bit, but it does apply to us today. What he's indicating in this last part is that our practice of the chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, mandala, Nichiren's prescribed practice of the Lotus Sutra, combined with these behavioral, he's extending not only the medicine, but our behavior of not having anything to do with other teachings, specifically other Buddhist sects at the time. But certainly today, same thing. There are all kinds of sects of Buddhism calling themselves Buddhism. And we have to be forthright in our mind, knowing that Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is the ultimate teaching, so that we don't fall desirous, if you will, or let our curiosity lead us to doing other practices, perhaps through friendship and, what would you call it? We'll make acceptances for people we want or we think we want in our lives, and they can be what Shakyamuni would have called evil friends. In other words, they're a negative influence. They're pulling us away from our stalwart practice. And they're doing it with things that they speak of as similar but different in other sectarian means, and they can pull us away. So he says those who slander the Dharma, by avoiding that, by not falling prey to the desirous nature of samsaric relationships, that's nice that you do that. You should be chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. I'm going to go chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo if you care to join me, but I will not join you. I will not go to your place of worship or practice to check out some different way. No, there's only one way. It's the way that I'm practicing, and I'm sorry if you don't like that. Bye-bye. And that removes our sickness of greed. So he's identifying that those influences that we have in our lives of derailing our practice towards something different, whatever it is from our own nature of greed, because we can't stop wanting in samsara. and wanting to be loved or accepted or friends with others often clouds our judgment in general, but certainly with regard to this practice. So he's identifying our behavior and really turning it inward to understand that what's leading us by the nose isn't that they're fooling us or they're making us try other things. It's our greed. It's our insatiable desire to want more from samsara, right? And then the next one is, some people, for the very reason I just stated, will say, well, you're a fanatic, you're out of your mind, you're this or that, or you're one of those, or blah, 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 will be reviled or ridiculed or whatever. And our forbearance, which says, it's okay, you don't understand. I understand that you don't understand. I wish you would come chant with me. If you won't chant with me, or if you want to call me names or whatever, I understand that's just ignorance. It's human samsaric ignorance. And so that removes the sickness of anger. You don't let it anger you, right? You don't let it turn you into a manipulative, revengeful kind of person because these people are just being ignorant, right? And the practitioner knows that he shall attain Buddhahood in accordance with the passage, this person with respect to Buddha way is assured. There can be no doubt. This subdues the defilement of foolishness. In other words, to forget how precious this teaching is simply because greed and anger or other desirous natures of samsara make us foolish, make us think, well, maybe there's something there. Maybe I'll, anything to get this friendship or anything to get, or get back at those guys, those people. This is foolishness. Just stick with the program. It's that simple. Okay, so that's an interesting inculcated lesson in taking the good medicine. The flip side of it in samsara is to remember that this is the good medicine, no other, right? So that's interesting as a teaching tool, right? I don't know I don't remember the 9th point. I thought we were still on the 8th. Yeah, we jumped from the 8th to somehow the 10th. Anyway, this is the next sentence that's being analyzed. Quote, this excellent good medicine I now leave here. You should take it and drink it and not fear that you will not be cured, end quote. It's from the same story. So again, breaking down sentence to sentence. The Ongi Kuden states, so obviously this isn't Nico talking. This is a latter monk. This excellent good medicine quote unquote, can refer either to the Buddha's scriptural teaching or to his sarira. And it doesn't offer a definition for that word. I'm sorry, I don't know what it means. In the final Dharma age, it indicates Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Excellent, quote unquote, means that what all Buddhas of the 3 time periods prefer is the 5 characters of the Daimoku, Myoho Renge Kyo. Now leave, quote unquote, indicates the final Dharma age. Interesting. Here, quote, indicates within all of Jampudvipa, the country of Japan, for them, you, quote unquote, is all beings of the final Dharma age. Take, quote unquote, refers to the ritual in which one receives and holds the Lotus Sutra. Drink, quote unquote, is to chant the Daimoku. And from the time that one drinks, quote unquote, one is the uncreated triple-bodied Buddha. This cures one of the sickness and pain of the notion that the Buddha first attained enlightenment in this lifetime. Now Nichiren and his followers who chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo are the ones to whom this passage refers. Again, taken apart word for word is almost a fetish in Buddhism. But all of it is to say that if you take apart the words of this sutra, you can see a direct relationship with the analogy and the reality. The analogy being a representative, expedient means to teach the more straightforward. You have this great tool to attain your enlightenment, and at the same time, of course, because you're awakening, you are dispelling the desirous, obsessive manipulation of reality, foolishly creating all your suffering. Right? This goes back to the Four Truths. And now we go from 10 to 14. So obviously, once again, this is the kind of jumping around that a latter monk would be taking notes in order to solidify his or her understanding of Nichiren's teachings from the body of teachings of his own teachers, which would be post-Nichiren, including Nikko in this case, because this is all happening in the Fuji school, not the Minobu school. And so far, all of this that I'm reading that's quoted from the Ongi Kuden certainly tracks with Nichiren's doctrines. There's no glaring errors in the quotes from the Ongi Kuden. We've seen a little bit of moneyness in the past, but so far, this all tracks, so that's good. 14, then I, along with the company of monks, shall together appear on sacred Vulture Peak. Now, that's not from that story. That's somewhere else in the Lotus Sutra. So, again, we've jumped from 10 to 14. I guess some of those other points made in the Ongi Kuden weren't fresh for this monk or useful at this particular time. So this is another sentence from the Lotus Sutra, and we follow it with the Ongi Kuden states, once again. This passage reveals that the assembly on Vulture Peak is solemnly present and has not yet dispersed. So that's a statement that the whole, I think this refers to the entirety of the Lotus Sutra, but this ceremony or this sermon of a ceremony in the sky, which is populated by every possible mental personages that can exist in Jampadvipa, this teaching has not yet exhausted its benefits. In other words, this is the ultimate teaching, and it still applies today, as I would say to you, right? So now we're going to take apart words again. Then, quote unquote, means the time of the final Dharma age, which to us is now. Where was I? When the Buddha responds to the being's aspiration, I, quote unquote, means Shakyamuni, along with, quote unquote, indicates bodhisattvas, other sage beings are here indicated by the company of monks, quote unquote. Together, quote unquote, means the 10 realms. Well, that's interesting. Sacred Vulture Peak, quote unquote, means the land of eternally tranquil light, so awakening itself. Quote, then I, along with the company of monks, shall together appear on sacred Vulture Peak, end quote. Keep this secret, exclamation point. I'm not sure. This kind of happens several times as we have read in the past. This keep this secret. Nichiren would end some of his letters this way. In one way, it would indicate that what I've just told you is a very profound nature of this practice, and not everyone is ready to hear it. So keep it to yourself, in other words. Not that it's secret, but keep it to yourself. Not with avarice, with manipulation, but with compassion, because others aren't ready to hear this. So that's interesting that this this aspect of that sentence from the Lotus Sutra, which I would think is very straightforward, when the whole story of the Lotus Sutra, as I've just said a little bit ago, this ceremony in the sky, as it were, is a very dreamlike story. But it speaks quite directly to the experience of awakening. This weightlessness, right? In the sky, as it were. The treasure tower being our Buddha nature, right? Reflected as it is in this mandala. What we call the Go Honzon, the great and important earthly manifestation of our Buddha-ness, our samsaric path, spinal cord to our every nerve in our body, expressing the reality of all phenomena, Myoho Renge Kyo, right? I'm doing the same thing as they were trying to do in their day, taking these words and applying them to our mental cognition, our reality. So I suppose a lot, especially at that time, 13th century Japan, well, at that time, we don't know when this was written. This could have been in the 15th century, a couple hundred years later, probably. Somewhere between those times, when this was added into the Nichiren canon, was in the 1400s, but that doesn't mean that's when it was written. Somewhere between Nikko and the 1400s, this was a monk documenting his learning of the teachings of Nichiren. And obviously a lot came from Nikko's, 2K's, foundation of the Fuji school, because that's what he's quoting. Keeping it secret indicates to me simply that this is knowledge for him to have, or her, and that he can use it as a foundation for teaching, but that not everyone is ready to hear this. To us, I mean, it only makes sense to talk about it. So keep it secret. It's an interesting little diversion, I would think. But this passage clearly reveals the actuality of the single thought moment comprising the 3,000 realms. Okay, I don't see the direct association with that, but in that thought of the single thought moment being the 3,000 realms refers directly to original enlightenment, yeah. But that you could say that about all of Buddhism. They're all trying to elucidate that our Buddha nature is inherent, not only in us, but in all phenomena, right? That almost seems like a reminder to self, note to self, right? Which is contained in the origin teaching. The object of worship, again, I don't like that word, we don't worship it. The object or objective of practice, I would say, here Nichiren's mandala, is the manifestation of this passage. And there's always a danger in the way this mandala is discussed. Because and I'll say it again, in the midst of this, is important to identify that this mandala is Nichiren's samsaric tool that he's offering for our dual nature, our duality, that we are samsaric beings, right? In manifestations of something that is far greater than just, birth and death and hands and feet and skin and so on. That's our samsaric reality of thingness. But our Buddha wisdom, mental wisdom, cognition, perception of this samsaric reality as simply a phase in the manifestations of life, right? That is, it's our objective to see and perceive and understand that is our situation as samsaric beings, being pulled constantly by the desire to possess and instantiate and maintain, right, to make permanent, is the reason for our miseries, our stresses, our pain. And so to re-perceive all of this reality while we're in it as transient, it's all transient, it's all impermanent, frees our emotions of and desirous nature of grasping, relaxes it, and allows us to feel the joy and calm of witnessing rather than being owned and owning. Make sense? So in that way, this mandala, which is itself a thing, is a portal, it's a reflector, it's a reminder, it's a tool, right? We build a house with hammers, but the house is not hammers. We've got to make that distinction. Nichiren himself constantly calls this a mirror, right? Because that's not it. We don't worship that. I've heard people say this. We worship this piece of paper here. That's a direct quote from somebody who considered themselves a leader. And I won't tell you what organization I was in. But that is primal error. No. This is just a perfect tool to instantiate the mind that we have inherently. This is our manifestation in mind from this mirror. If you're looking for a go hanzon, a great ultimate object of worship, it's our mental go hanzon in the mind. That's not the go hanzon. That's a reflector. That's a mandala to help us mentally conjure our ultimate Buddha-ness. That's important to remember. The minute you start to see an object, as this bad English says, as the source, you are falling into self and other. That's a very samsaric mistake. And you'll know this, just as Tammy wrote me recently, when you're chanting fervently, dedicated, with the right attitude, you're really in your daimoku, Namu Myo Renge Kyo, and this mandala starts to move, shift, change shape, get brighter and dimmer, whatever. It alters the way you see it is changing, and you catch it, and when it first happens, it's a little startling, and I will tell you right now, don't stop chanting. When that happens, you're fusing with your Buddha nature. The mirror is working, right? When you look at yourself in the mirror in your bathroom at home or wherever, you don't make the mistake of reaching in and trying to grab yourself by the face, do you? Or trying to remove something that's on your cheek by swiping at the mirror. You don't do that. You don't make that mistake. Well, that's the very same mistake as treating that mandala as your enlightenment. It is not. It is not even the object of your enlightenment. The objective of your enlightenment is to awaken your Buddha mind. That's where Gohonzon is. Nichiren says this. Don't take my word for it. Never seek this Gohonzon outside yourself. That very step is self and other, is the delusion of samsara in a nutshell. So don't make that mistake. Understand that this is your great reflector, your tool to instantiate that Gohonzon. And when it starts to dance around and do funny things, that is your Gohonzon mind, your Buddha mind, seeing reality, real reality, that things are just transient. They're a momentary instantiation of some process. It's amazing when that happens. So stay in it as long as you can. Look for it. Don't consciously sit there and focus on that, because that's samsara. You see that it's a little weird, but when you experience it, you'll know it. Okay, enough on that again. Thus, together, quote unquote, indicates the principle of true suchness that, is unchanging, and, quote, appear indicates the wisdom of true suchness that accords with conditions, which is basically what I was just explaining. Together, quote unquote, means the single thought moment, and appear, quote unquote, means the 3,000 realms. Again, there's a little too much dissection going on here. But as a teaching tool, if you want to look at the statement as once again inferring the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment, well, I can use that too. I can tell you that what I just told you, when your mandala starts to dance around on you, let's say, whether it gets three-dimensional or whether it shifts or moves or vibrates, anything you detect in that mandala that seems unusual is your mind shifting perspective. It's your mind going, am I experiencing Buddhahood, or am I experiencing this cool little squiggle in a box on the wall? Right? And chanting Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu, I'm dedicating myself to instantiate my Gohonzon using this mandala, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, calling it forth. When it happens and you stay in it, you will feel, mind and body, a shift in your system of being. You will feel the lightness of being. Stay in it as much as you can. That is your experience of original enlightenment, original cause and effect, innate Buddhahood. How many ways can we say it? Right? Where are we time-wise? Okay. Let's finish off that number. We'll stop at the next one, which is 23. That's a big leap from 14. Okay. It also states, quote, then, end quote, indicates the Saha world at the time of the Buddha's original enlightenment. So that would mean the Big Bang, I suppose. The remainder of the passage describes the mandala on which the 10 realms are solemnly present. Yes, the 10 realms or 10 worlds are on this mandala. Therefore, then, end quote, quote unquote, indicates the final Dharma age, the 5th period. So when he said then, capital T, indicates Saha world, Now, then, with a smaller t, indicates the final Dharma age. So again, like I said, this is just note-taking. These are different ways of seeing the same statement in the Lotus Sutra as providing. Nichiren has said this in the past. He has said that every word in the Lotus Sutra, he counts them out as like 68,746 characters of the Lotus Sutra. All of them contain Myoho Renge Kyo. And all of them are contained within the chanting of Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Myoho Renge Kyo is every character of the teaching of the sermon, as well as the sermon being the instantiation of Myoho Renge Kyo. Nichiren has said that. We've read that in his Gosho. So for this monk, whoever he or she is, to take then, the word then, and ascribe two disparate meanings to them, the one the original enlightenment, the other this moment now, the final age, identifying the fifth period of the perfect and complete teaching. I is Shakyamuni, along with indicates bodhisattvas. The company of monks means those of the two vehicles. Maybe that one's a little more dubious. Together indicates those of the six paths, and appear means that all these are arranged together in the pure land of Vulture Peak. Vulture Peak means the object of worship as well as the dwelling place of Nichiren and his followers who chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Okay, now see, I want you to see, because this translation, these words that I see over and over and over and over again, even in Nichiren's Gosho, object of worship, it's very, very troubling to the Western mind. So let me get you off the hook here. Object of worship, as I've already repeated, we don't worship, and it's not the object that's our objective. The object is a mirror, and our dedicated practice and confidence, not worship, is to instantiate the mind condition that it's mirroring. Our Gohonzon, internal Gohonzon, our Buddha mind. And Vulture Peak is that place, that realization that the Buddha mind has. The tranquil light, right? The idea that everything is simply energy in motion. That is the nature of all phenomena, this entire universe, us included. Everything is constantly shifting. And we get to experience it. Only in this human life, with this assemblages of consciousnesses, with this mind of Buddha, can we witness this process. But it's one thing to witness, it's another to be captured. Samsara, like my analogy of the rapids, right? Big rocky rapids, furious river flows. They're amazing to watch, hear, listen to, and contemplate. Far different to watch, hear, contemplate than to be in a little canoe or a little canoe and bouncing around in the rapids, right? Getting submerged and trying to stay afloat and breathe and navigate the rocks. That is tumultuous. That is stressful, anxiety, pain, suffering. Whether you think of it as a sport or not. To be just next to those rapids and observing them is to feel the power of the rapids and see the tumult without having to be bounced around and stressful about surviving. It's the same kind of thing. That when we chant Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, we are at Vulture Peak. We are Eagle Peak, whatever great bird you want to call it. It shifts depending on who you read, right? which translation. And it's no mistake that I'm sure it was Vulture Peak, because vultures are great birds. And I could make analogies about the cycle of life with a vulture that I can't necessarily with an eagle, not in the same way anyway. But to a Westerner, an eagle seems like much more regal a bird, doesn't it? It's the national symbol of the United States of America. What country has the vulture as its national bird? So the fact that this peak that was named for a great bird, which is probably would be a much better translation. I'd be curious to see how it was taught in Prakrit, verbally. Probably wasn't vulture or eagle. It was probably like a great bird, right? I don't know that for sure. But the fact that it's dances between the two definitions, to me, is an indication of cultural bias. Oh, we can't say it's a vulture peak. Americans won't like that. Let's call it eagle peak. Yeah, they'll relate. Who takes that editorial license and why? Well, obviously we know why. But it's a bit of a defilement, isn't it? Anyway, that's a pet peeve, obviously. So, once again, in this instance, this statement of object of worship, which I abhor, as a statement, as a translation, don't get me wrong here, as well as the dwelling place of Nichiren and his followers who chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, both Vulture Peak and the object or objective being equated, again, stamps this lesson that the invocation of the Daimoku is itself Buddha-ness. Buddha-ness being interpreted as a place in the sky where the treasure tower exists, Gohanzan, right? It all tracks. So, with that, we're then jumping to item 23. I'm going to leave that off today, and we'll continue mañana. And what is today? Friday? I think today's Friday. Yeah. So, tomorrow we will get to... Man, it's all about the Ongi Kuden now. He's not quoting anything else. Ooh, this is a long document. Well, what this ensures is, and what I'm curious about, I don't think we're going to finish Sunday. I have, for different reasons, missed recording my Gangyo the last 2 Sundays, and I apologize for that. I'm going to make darn sure that I do this Sunday. Tomorrow being Saturday, we'll get a good ways further into this document, and we'll also, and you notice I changed the order. I started out doing Gangyo and then a discussion. For those of you who maybe you do Gangyo on your own and you don't necessarily feel like doing it with me, I'm putting the talk ahead of the Gangyo in the last couple of videos I did, so that you don't miss a discussion in lieu of Gangyo, and then I do Gangyo afterward. I think that works just as well, because now you have thoughts and ideas and creative juices going on in your mind about the teachings of Nichiren and Shakyamuni. As you go into Gangyo, you may see things in your Gangyo, in your recitation, in your book, in the meditations. You may see things differently because of the discussion. So I think that works exceedingly well. I would recommend at least 15 minutes of chanting before you watch the video, just so you can be really prepped and your mind is, turned on to the lesson, or more. I don't want to keep you from Daimoku, by all means. I'm just giving you minimums. And tomorrow we'll get a good ways, and then Sunday Well, I don't know that we'll finish it. I don't want to rush it, but we'll get pretty close. And then record the gongyo. I know a lot of you want that, so I don't want to let you down. Anyway, in the meantime, be careful with your health. If you're struggling with illness or the threat of worse, which certainly this recent pandemic is every threat possible on that in that regard, it's going to make your practice really difficult. And so I want your practice to be, hey, this is not an easy practice, is it? So anything we can do to make it easier. Rewards from our practice are very inspiring. Oops, look at that. But, we're samsaric beings and we lose our inspirations quickly. So let's keep this practice fresh and fun, and your health is very essential for that. And be kind. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. Enjoy your life. Enjoy your practice. Be confident. Thank you for being here. Don't forget threefoldlotus.com. Lots of information there you can get for free. And download the audio podcast if that's a useful tool for you, by all means. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.